Today on the breakdown, no millennial pauses here. Instead, it's Adrian Mateos with 11 players left against Philip Wenzelberger. And they're playing for $1 million, people. That's right. It's a Dr. Evil $1 million. And, I mean, not right now. They're not playing for it. They're playing for it. You know, like whoever wins the whole tournament gets it. It isn't just this hand for $1 million, to be clear. But there's only 11 left, meaning there's a really good chance that whoever wins this hand really might win that $1 million. And, of course, it's Adrian Mateos, one of the very best in the world to do it ever. I don't know. It's hard to say. That's a lot. But he's really good. Anyway, he is going to summon all of his octopi greatness and see if he can put the tentacles around Philip's neck and squeeze and squeeze and squeeze and try and get one through, as people will say. Can Wenzelberger hang on with just one piddling pair? It ain't going to be easy. It ain't going to be easy. One pair. That's a fruit. All right, on the breakdown with Grant Dennison and Jonathan Levy.
What associates Mateos with an octopus? Why do the Spanish eat a lot of octopi?
I mean, they probably
Maybe they do. They probably do. They seem like the type of culture that would eat a lot of octopi.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
But that isn't what it is. It's the look. It's the look and the intelligence.
Okay, so like if you are deep sea diving and you enter a cave and there's an octopus in there and it kind of looks at you, you'd be like, is that Adrian Mateos, the poker player? And then you realize, no, it's an octopus. Yeah. But they have a similar vibe and a similar look and like a way they hold themselves.
Don't you think if Mateos could get you like in one of those, gets his arm around your neck and like get the crook of his elbow right against your throat and your windpipe, he'd squeeze it till you die. Don't you feel like you might do that?
Are octopi known to do that?
I mean, probably.
I don't think they do that. They don't have elbows.
Right, but they have the tentacles, which is that's Adrian Mateos's version of a tentacle. It says as crook of his elbow. Squeeze it until you can't breathe anymore and you die. I don't
think that's exactly how it would work with Mateos.
There's a documentary. Someone followed around Adrian Mateos with a camera for a while, and you must have heard My Mateos Friend is what it's called. And no, My Mateos Teacher. Oh, I blew it. It's called My Mateos Teacher.
Straight to Fubo.
Yeah, straight to Fubo. Very few people are going to get that joke, the Fubo joke, though. Should have said Hulu.
Fubo is national, and it's terrible, and everybody knows it. So,
it's national, and it's terrible. And first of all, most people don't know it in this country. Second, this is an international podcast, buddy. It's a whole world out there. There's only 300 million people in America. There's 8 billion in the world. We're talking to all 8 billion. Try and remember that.
We're talking about a Spaniard and a German duking it out. That's what we're doing.
So why are you making Fubo jokes? What are you doing?
I think that they need to know.
You didn't. That's what I think. You didn't educate them, though. You just said it and moved on.
Fubo is a very bad streaming service that has live TV, and it's terrible.
That's more like it.
Yeah. So they're not going to sponsor us anytime soon, but that's okay. We don't need them. They would probably lowball us anyway.
I don't even want sponsors anymore.
I hate them. I hate money. Adrian Mateos, I don't think would get you in the crook of his elbow. He seems like a pacifist to me.
Oh my God.
More out of apathy than anything else. Like if somebody was like trying to fight him, he'd just be like looking at his phone like, what? I am doing calculations.
I think he's a pacifist, but I think he can't resist the lure of choking someone out given the opportunity. You know what I mean? I think so
just
philosophically,
just to feel what it feels like.
Exactly. It's like I have to. I'm again to feel it again. He's chasing the high of the first kill still, but he ultimately would choose not to engage in any kind of violence except the opportunity to put the crook of the elbow and choke somebody out till they die.
Okay.
It's not liable. You can't be liable for that, right? I can't get in trouble for that. Surely.
Let's get to more serious poker discussion. Yeah, I think it is reasonable to put Mateos among the greatest of all time. It depends on where you draw the line of greatest of all time, because I don't know where he sits in the firmament, but it's somewhere in like the top 40 tournament players of all time.
It's somewhere between like Texas Dolly and Mike Matusow.
Stop it. But not like he's one of those players who could be the greatest tournament player of all time. We just don't really know how to parse who is the greatest.
Seems unlikely that he's the greatest of all time. It seems unlikely that he's the greatest currently, although he is clearly one of the very best.
Yeah, I'm just saying it wouldn't be absurd if there was some algorithm that came out that was able to tell you exactly who was the best, and it was like, actually, Adrian Mateos is the best by 0.1. You'd be like,
That's
okay,
true.
I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. He's just barely better than Kenna James.
Yep, just barely. I mean, I think, speaking of the GOAT conversation, I think I kind of agree with Galfond. I think it's Doyle Brunson, just because of the versatility and longevity and how far ahead of the game he was. And he wrote the book, right? Like, people say that about people, but he legitimately wrote the book that spurned modern poker.
Yeah. That's a very reasonable one. When all is said and done, so 50 years from now, do you think it's still going to be Doyle Brunson, or do you think it's going to be somebody else?
It's going to be hard to beat him, but I think just statistically it's likely that somebody else emerges. But it's hard to imagine who that person would be. I think it depends on your criteria, but Doyle was good in tournaments. He was good in cash. He played all sorts of different games of cash. So the best comparison, I guess, is Phil Ivey, right? Because Phil Ivey's been doing it for quite a long time. Yeah. And is still elite and difficult, and just won a bracelet last year in the 10K deuce to 7, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, Phil Ivey might overtake Doyle if he does it for 40 more years.
I think Negreanu has also got a shot. Is still drawn really live for this. With his already impressive resume, how many more years he's got to go, and his willingness to adapt and learn, so he can keep up with everyone. Ivey. It feels like Ivey adapts almost automatically. Maybe he just does it quietly, and Negreanu does it loudly. So we hear about Negreanu going through learning this stuff. He's talking about it, and Ivey we never hear about it. But Negreanu clearly continues to put in the work to keep up with the youngsters, and that's really powerful. And so I think I expect he will not stop doing that. I think that's important to him. So
yeah, I think two things that he doesn't have that Doyle does have, and the first one is error dependent a little bit, but I'm not sure anybody else besides Doyle could have done it. Is literally changing the game, which is what Doyle did. True. Negreanu has not done that.
Yeah,
and Doyle has all the games. Negreanu is really just Hold'em.
I think he probably has a few of the other games, but you are correct. He certainly doesn't have all the games. Doyle had all the games. Ivey has all the games, I think, too, right? So that is a huge thing. So part of it comes down to, of course, just the criteria of how do we even determine this? Because there's a million ways to even say who would or wouldn't be the greatest. But I guess if we're just saying greatest poker player, we're trying to be as inclusive as possible with all the different things that would everything is in play. Yeah. Then Doyle and Ivey seem to be really good ones. I wonder if Stu Unger. He was maybe the longevity, the greatest ability is availability, and he didn't have it. So maybe he just
he's the Gale Sayers of poker.
Right. Yeah. Very good.
Right. So he was great, but we just don't know. Given enough entropy, how much would he degrade, and would he be able to keep it up the way that Doyle pretty much did? He made final tables when he was 88. Doyle did. I mean,
to be clear, so Gale Sayers was one of the great football players of all time, but he only played 4 or 5 years.
4 years.
Yeah, just for people who don't know. And the thing about Stewie is, A, he died young, but B, he was such an addict that it's hard to imagine him, even if he lived a lot longer, being able to keep up or being able to play at the same kind of level. Eventually, you figure the drugs would have been a problem. Maybe he would have cleaned up, though. I guess it's possible he could have cleaned up, too, had he lived.
I heard crazy Stu Unger story at the poker table the other day. I can't account for its veracity because it was just a guy telling the story, but it seemed like he really knew what he was talking about. That he had read this in a book or whatever. Maybe you've heard this story because I know you've read a lot about Stu Unger.
I have.
But about his photographic memory, how he could do this thing where he would give somebody a 6-deck shoe and say, pull out 5 of the decks, and the only stipulation is you have to say the card as it comes out. So he says 7 of hearts, ace of clubs, 3 of hearts, whatever. And once 5 decks were gone, Stu could name the remaining cards.
I don't know that story, but I believe it. I know he's done things like count down the deck, which is where you show the deck, you shuffle it, you show the deck, and then you do it. And he could name all 52 in a row just having seen them, which is also essentially impossible, but he was able to do it. And he could also do things like he would play gin. He was the best gin player potentially of all time. And he could, without fail, name the cards in the people's hands, exactly the card, even though he never saw you. That's the this, that's the, because he knew how they would arrange them and stuff. He would know what literally their entire holdings were. I mean, it's pretty sick, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So he might be like the greatest raw talent of all
Yeah,
time.
that's what he
for
is.
card games.
Yeah.
But Doyle had everything, right? Like Doyle had a good even keel. He had the exact right personality. Doyle not only could be the best player in the game, but could make the game go, I would guess. Like having
Right.
Doyle in the game is like a good
Right.
thing, even though he's maybe the best player in the game.
Yep. I think you're right.
That's a talent on itself for a cash game.
Big time.
Like, yeah.
Big time. Like JRB's whole existence is predicated on the fact that people like Andrew Roble, people don't want to play with Andrew Roble, but they want to play with JRB, and so they're a package deal, and Andrew Roble basically pays him to play in the game, right? Like that's basically how that goes. That's amazing. What an existence.
Yeah.
But then Andrew Roble doesn't have to be, you know, he just has to be somewhat friendly. He doesn't have to do all the things. He just gets to be Andrew Roble and do well enough that he can cover JRB.
It's kind of like combining like JRB at social, Roble at cash game hold'em, like Negreanu at tournaments, essentially, for the time, and then like, I don't know, current Ivy at mixed games. That's what Doyle was.
Yeah, that's probably true. That's probably true. I mean, he was so far ahead of everyone. I mean, he says, you know, he made like $1 million off of Super System, but he says he can't imagine how much money it cost him to write that book. And it's true. Like, no one understood the idea of suited connectors until he wrote that book.
Yeah.
He was doing that and no one else was. And no one, or at least no one had any strategy around it. They probably saw him doing it once in a while and didn't really get it, but tried a little. But if they didn't know what they were doing, they didn't have a plan. It didn't really help very much, you know. But he got it. And like that was like this, the idea of a semi-bluff was basically unknown until he wrote about it. Like, again, he knew about it, and maybe two other guys did. Chip Reese probably did because they were best friends. But like essentially no one knew about the semi-bluff. Like that would be a thing you would do. It's just either you're bluffing or you're not, and there's no gradations there, or, you know, there's no sense of why you'd want to bluff this or not bluff that, and if you're bluffing with equity versus not. Like, none of that existed. Like, holy shit. He ruined, in some ways, he really ruined how poker was so easy, I'm sure, if you know all that stuff and no one else does, and he just gave it all away, essentially. I mean, he traded for $1 million in incredible notoriety, but gave away tens of millions probably doing that.
Imagine being able to travel back to 2005 with our current knowledge. It's probably what it felt like to Doyle, like 10 years after he wrote Super System. He's like, what did I do? You know?
Right. Except it was probably like the way when he was playing in, you know, the fucking 80s and early 90s, it was probably like playing almost on like Play Money Poker Stars type stuff, you know, where people are just all over the place. They're obviously a little bit more serious about the money, you know, the stakes and stuff like that. So they're not just going to jam with 7-5 off or something like that. But just in terms of like no real sense of like why you bet, why you would call, why you wouldn't. No one really has any idea what they're doing, and no one. It's just sort of everything feels sort of random, and it's just people just see it as gambling, and you just sit there and you just crush them because you actually have a plan and they don't. Yeah. No one else has a plan in the entire room. How wild! How incredible!
So I do think it will be hard for him to be overtaken with all that we've said. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's weird. He brought poker into this more sophisticated era. He was the beginning of that. But he also got the benefit of playing in the less sophisticated era, which no one else gets to have.
But he was still good when it became more sophisticated.
He was still very good. There's no question. He still played in the biggest games in the world until he got too old and just like physically couldn't do it, right? That is incredibly impressive, for sure. I think he's a great candidate. I don't know if he's the best of all time. I think he's a fabulous candidate for it. It's really hard to put all that together. I guess I would pick him too right now based on what we're saying. I guess he has to be number one, but I think there's got to be, you know, there's probably a bunch of guys who we've never heard of who are incredible at poker, you know, and are like just sort of
but if we haven't heard of them, they don't have the tournament side.
True, but they may not have the tournament side, not because they're not good enough, but because there's more money to be made not playing tournaments, doing other stuff. You know, it's just not worth it to waste their time playing tournaments.
I don't know if I buy that.
Why?
They would play some tournaments, I would think, if they were really that good.
Why? If you can play much bigger all the time cash and you're incredible at it, why would you play tournaments even if you're the best tournament player in the world? Who cares?
We would probably know about them then anyway. Like, they would be on some of these stream shows.
Well, I mean, there are guys like Limitless, who's, you know, Like, so there's lots of guys like that. You know, he may be the best of those guys, but it's hard to know because like we hadn't even heard of Limitless until 2 years ago, right? And then suddenly it's like, oh, or Linus Love is another example of these like unbelievably good guys who never really on TV and don't play in tournaments. And now they may only be good at one thing. Like they may only be good at like heads up hold'em, but they may not be. And there may be guys who are good at all the games. The Galfons of the world, you know. By the way, Galfon has got a shot down the road to be the best player of all time.
If he keeps it up, yeah. He has a shot.
Because he plays all the games, clearly.
Yep.
I mean, the Galfon challenge, really incredible that he would even do that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
He's good. He's got a shot.
Yeah.
Hey, before we start the hand, I have a story that I think you're going to want to hear.
Great.
It's a poker story.
I hope.
It happened just like 4 days ago, and it is definitely the biggest technical poker fuck up I've made in my life.
Oh, I do want to hear that. You're right.
Yeah. So it was at our Portland club, Portland Meadows, and we were playing 5-2-2, which is a double board bomb pot where you get 5 cards, you play 2 from your hand, there's 2 boards and 2 winners. Like ostensibly 2 winners, but sometimes there's chops and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're just
Many
playing
people
high.
know what I'm talking.
You're just playing high on both boards, like for half the pot each.
High, both boards.
Yep.
So I'm not going to tell the whole hand. I'm just going to say what happens on the river.
Thank God.
Yeah. I have queens full on one of the boards, which is the second nuts.
Yep.
The nuts would be quad eights.
Quads, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to say the names of the players that I'm against or anything like that. But one guy, you don't know Jonathan. He's like a relatively new guy who's just like super gamble action guy. Could have a lot of stuff every time. He's great for the game. We love him. He's got 1,200 in front of him. I have like 3K in front of me. The other player has about 3,100 in front of him. He's a guy that you do know. He's very likely a pro. He's always there. He's good. He knows what he's doing. We end up all in on the river because the pot is huge.
Yeah.
I'm all in for 3K, 1,200, 3,100.
You only have queens full on one board? You have nothing else on the other board?
I have queens full on one board. The other board I have 2 pairs as a backup, but it's probably not good.
Okay.
Yeah. It made sense based on the opponents for me to be all in. Doesn't matter.
I can see where this is going, but go ahead.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. Get called in both spots. The pro has the nuts on the top board, which is a set of aces, which remain the nuts the whole time.
Okay.
The other guy has quad eights, and he had 1,200 in front of him.
Oh, no, and you mucked your hand, so you didn't get half the pot.
I turned my hand over so people could see it.
Yeah.
But I did not table it.
Yeah.
And then I turned it
like this,
face down in the muck.
Yeah. Yep.
And the floor came over. They called the big floor because it was a big enough pot. They were like, we got to call the real floor to make sure that the ruling is right. And it was ruled that my hand was dead.
Yeah.
And the pro
that's correct.
Got to keep my 1,800 that I would have had. I would have chopped the side pot with the pro.
Yeah, you would have kept
it. $1,800 fuck up.
It's actually, it's 1,800 plus whatever money might have. Oh, that was all of it. Yeah. So it's 1,800. That's
it's a full.
That's
it's
a big
it's
one.
just the 18. It's just the 1,800.
It's 1,800. Okay. Yeah.
And so
how did you feel? Talk us through it.
Not great. Not great. I felt like a fucking moron.
Yep. Yeah. I get that. How long did you feel like? How long? Like actually, so this is 4 days ago. Do you still feel like any vestiges of like that?
Slight vestiges. This is probably the worst feeling I've had in poker. It's worse than busting the main event because it's such a like obvious fuck up.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
Do you think you'll never make that mistake again?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'll never make that mistake again.
Possible, if you play eventually that may save you. You won't realize it, but because you like have that process, it may save you a bigger pot down the road. It may save you more money down the road. So like it's a very expensive lesson, but if it for the rest of your life you always table that hand instead of do the other thing, it's probably good, but I mean horrible. Obviously horrible feeling.
So I have an opinion on this, but I want to hear your opinion. If you were the other pro, what would you have done in that situation? Would you have taken the 1,800?
I know what your answer is for sure.
Which is what?
You would not have taken the other 1,800.
I would not have.
Right, I know you wouldn't have.
You've seen me do stuff like that. Yeah.
I have. You, in fact, did that with me once where, like, I called you on some bet in one of these games, and mucked my hand, and then I misread my hand even. That's what it was, right? And then you later on were like, you know what? Here's your money back on that one, because you knew I actually had misread my hand. I didn't have anything else on the other board. I never was going to call, and I thought I had something that I didn't have. Right, is what it was. And that was I didn't ask you. It was shocking to me you even offered that. It was really nice of you. So I know you would give that money back. My honest answer, and this is just the truth, I would do it if I had a relationship with the person in any way, or I thought I was going to be playing with them for a long time. I would give it back. If I was like barely knew the guy / didn't like the guy / was not in that, it was like new to the casino and not going to be back or not going to play there much, I think I'd keep the money.
Well,
that's my real answer.
This is a guy that I'd actually been getting friendlier with recently.
Yeah.
But I'm not blaming him for taking the money. I'm not saying he shouldn't have or anything like that. I know I wouldn't have. There was another guy at the table who is not a pro, and you know this guy, but a pro level player who's very good.
I can guess.
Who was very much like wanted to like round up a mob, like level of
right.
he's never getting anything from me ever again. Like he was like really pissed at this other pro for not giving me the 1,800 back. And he's like, he thought it was super obvious because people saw the hand and everything.
Right, the seeing of the hand is pretty powerful. The fact that
I can see both sides, honestly. Like I can see taking it because it's like it depends on who I am. But even if we're gonna play together for a long time, this other pro knows that I'm at the very least a very capable player who can handle my shit. So like his argument could be like, it's on you to know the technical rules.
It's true.
That's part of the game. You're supposed to be good at this.
No doubt.
Totally fair. That's a fine argument. To the other point, like it's a very technical way to scoop 1,800 from somebody, right?
Of course.
Where like everybody knows what happened. Everybody knows I wasn't lying about having queens full there.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. When you say all that, actually, I think my inclination these days is actually to give the money back. Now that we're saying it more, and I think about it more, like I'm more like that than I used to be. I'm like, I know you really had it. It's absurd. Here you go. I think so, but I will say this: I don't think you're owed that money. Like
I agree. I agree.
I think
it's the choice of the other pro. It's for 100% his choice.
Fully that person's choice. I don't think it's scummy that he kept it. But I do think the fact that if he knows for sure that you had queens full and you just accidentally mucked it, I guess he's probably supposed to give you your money back. Supposed to, you know what I mean? Like I think I think
that's what. Yeah.
I think that's the play. But
the other guy at the table was like very clear on that. Like would not even consider the other side of it that we're considering at all. Not even close. Like
But the truth is, like as you said, it's ultimately on you, and it sucks a million ways. But consequences for your behavior are a good thing too. And like if you really learn to 100% of the time table your hand in these spots, when clearly you haven't completely learned that. And I'm not saying like I haven't made that mistake too. I think everyone makes that mistake in these specific games, that it happens. But like learning that to the degree where you literally never make that mistake again probably is probably worth $1,800, honestly. It's probably like over the amount of time you're going to be playing these games for the rest of your life, it's probably a bargain at $1,800, even though it doesn't feel like it right now, you know. So there's
I would have learned it if you gave the money back anyway.
Well, I don't know if you would have. I don't know if you would have learned it in the same way.
Maybe not as strongly.
It's possible there's a pot down the road where you lose $5,000 because of it, and you didn't learn it as well because in your mind it wasn't as important to learn because you got it back, and it's just like a dumb little thing that happened, and that's it. It's just a fun story. And then it costs you $5K, and you don't get the $5K back when you do now. You know, like shit like that. You'll never know either, because if you just teach yourself to always table in that spot, you'll never realize that you wouldn't have done it, you know? So, like, it'll be one of those. But this is exactly the spot where people get screwed a lot, though. Exactly in that, like, the big side pot stuff.
It was an expensive mistake. And
it's a rough one.
And I think from an ethics perspective, it's definitely okay that the other pro kept the money. I think it would have been less okay if I was a clear amateur.
I agree.
That would have been a bad thing.
I agree. If you really don't know what you're doing, like for sure you should get the money back. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but ultimately it's my mistake, right? That's my fuck up.
Without
I should know the rules. I should know the rules. I should know for sure where the money is and where it's going and all that stuff. That's on me.
I played a hand, a 5-2-2 hand, a while back now, probably 2 years ago, where it was me and another guy on the river. I bet he called. I tabled my hand. He held his hand up. I couldn't see it. He held his hand up, didn't show it to everyone. There was a guy sitting next to him who probably saw it. He like looked for a while. I thought I was just getting half and was trying to like get him to fold, but he ended up mucking. I got the whole pot. And then he started talking to the guy sitting next to him. And he's like, oh, I think I won half the pot, didn't I? And the guy's like, yeah, I think you did. You had the bottom. But I never saw the guy's hand, and he didn't show it to anyone else on the table. And it was a small pot, too. It was like probably $250, but $300. But it didn't even occur to me to give him the money back, to be clear. Like, I was just, because that's really different. Like, I didn't see it.
That sounds a little bit different.
Also, he could be wrong. I don't even know if he's right. You know what I mean? Like, but it's different than, like, he showed it. And it's also a side pot thing. Like, the side pot mistake is just a very common mistake that's going to happen where it's easy to forget that this is, I mean, but what we should all learn to do in these spots is just table the hand. Not be all, because some part of us is like trying to be like, I don't know, smart or cool or something, instead of just always table your hand in that spot. You can't
like
get
helpful to the dealers in some way, because like in those spots, having to read a bunch of hands, it's easier if you have to read fewer hands. You know, there's like a little,
Yeah. But especially once you've like show it to the table, like, but I understand. I think I've made, either I've nearly done that mistake or I've done that mistake in much smaller ways, you know, for a lot less money. Certainly I've made mistakes. I mean, God, you were there, I think, at the table maybe when we were playing our mixed game bomb pots, and I thought we were playing one type of drama ha. In fact, we were playing another, and I bet huge on the river and got called in 2 spots, was going to call a jam, was going to insta-call a jam. Thank God no one jammed. And they had hands they could jam with, too. I feel like I saved $1,000. And, like, proudly tabled my 2 full houses, and they were like, well, that full house loses because of this, and that full house is the worst hand you could possibly have in this situation game. And I thought it was like the best possible hand. It was like the worst. You know?
Like you're playing 49 and you thought you were playing 0 or something?
Yeah, it was basically that. I thought we were playing regular drama. So I'm like, I have 6s full and 6s full. And they were like, well, you have 6s full, which is no good, and you have like a 29. And I got a 3 because they were playing 0, you know, and I'm like, oh no. And I got 0 of the pot when I was like, excited, you know, like 6 is full in my hand. I was like, holy shit, this is like such a strong hand. And it turns out it's effectively the nuts. And it was one of the worst possible hands you could have. So I remember that. And I was like, oh no. And I didn't get the money back, but I didn't expect to. And I shouldn't have gotten the money back, you know.
Yeah.
By any means. That's a different spot, in fairness. That's a really different spot.
It is. And again, I'm not saying I should get the money back. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
It was just an interesting spot, and I think that many people would have treated it differently than the other pro, but I do not fault him for how he treated it.
Yeah.
And for me, I kind of feel like there's the benefit of like learning the lesson in a very painful way that makes it less likely for it to repeat. But also kind of from like almost, it sounds self-helpy, but it is true how I try to view things. Like as I get older, I'm kind of evolving into this person who's trying to see these things as opportunities rather than these negative events. Like how often is something like that going to happen? It's an opportunity for me to react in the way that I would like to have reacted a year from now. Right. Like, so I was super chill about it. I made jokes at the table. I had fun with it, you know, and like it haunts me a little bit from just how dumb I was about it. But being able to react to it in a way that's not like sour and bitter and shitty and like being an asshole for the rest of the day or anything like that, and just like get back to playing good poker, making good decisions as soon as I can. That's a great opportunity that I don't often get.
That's a really cool way to look at it, for sure. For sure.
That's how I saw it.
Yep. I like that. Well, you should definitely do that, or you should get up from the table, you know, and not play anymore. Those are the two things you should do, but mostly that's not how it goes for people, right?
It was pretty late, and I played about as long as I planned to. I played another hour or so, and I made like some good plays after that, and I felt like I was making good decisions. So
good.
It was, overall, I feel like it feels kind of good, almost, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, like these horrible things that we worry about, and this is the kind of thing that, like, you know, mixed game players have nightmares about, these exact situations. But like, it sucks, but it's also like you survive it. It's fine. Like you move on, and like, all right, let's move on. Let's get to the hand.
Hey, it's like the old days. It's been a half hour almost, and we haven't gotten to the hand.
Eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know, I think that we had a lot of worthwhile discussion this time. It wasn't us just talking about like Marvel movies or something.
Exactly. No, that was poker focus, man. It's totally fine.
All right, Chris Jones suggested this hand.
Minnesota,
all the way from Minnesota. I guess they just got the internet. He's been calling it in, but he finally did it on Discord.
Pony Express.
Yeah. And this is the EPT Monte Carlo main event with 11 remaining. This happened in like May 2024.
Okay.
1,208 players. First place €1 million, which is like just over $1 million. Adrian Mateos is the headliner of the 11 remaining players. The table is 5-handed or 6-handed. And it's 30K, 60K. Mateos has 2.73 million chips in front of him, so approaching 50 bigs.
Okay.
Pretty strong. He opens Jack 10 off from the cutoff. Technical thing. When it's, I guess is one, two, I think it's 6-handed. So he was +1 according to PokerStars on the EPT. But do you think they should go from button back instead of under the gun forward for when they're listing the positions on TV? Because +1 is deceiving. It sounds like he's opening Jack 10 off from +1 9-handed, where really he's opening from the cutoff.
Yeah, I mean, they should say cutoff instead of +1.
Yeah.
That's what they should. That's the easiest way to do it, right? We have names for most of these spots. But yeah, they should not call it +1. You are totally right. It's the cutoff and the hijack.
Because it took me a second because I was like, Mateos opened Jack 10 off +1. Like, even with almost 50 bigs and everybody else is scared, maybe that's why. But then I looked at the table. I was like, oh, it's short-handed.
Yeah,
it's actually
really
the cutoff.
different.
It's different.
Yeah.
Anyway, he min opens to 120K.
Okay.
Philip Wenzelberger. Let's meet Philip. He is from Germany. He's got 3.43 million, by the way. He's got Mateos covered. He's got over 50 bigs.
Okay.
But he does not have a lot of tournament experience. He's like an older guy, and he heading into this event. Let me take a look. I had switched pages, but here we go. He had a total of about 25,000 in Hendon heading into this event.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
So this is his best tournament experience ever.
Oh, yeah, by far.
By a lot.
By far.
Very exciting. Good for him.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's clearly an amateur, and they describe him as an amateur. The commentators do as well.
Okay. Interesting.
And he's in the big blind. He's got 9-7 of spades, and he makes the necessary defend.
Sure.
Now, I think there's definitely an argument for 3-betting a huge portion of your range here against a Mateos Open when he's going to be trying to leverage like the I've been here and you haven't thing. And hands that play well like this that might get you into some sticky one-pair spots against Mateos might be worth 3-betting. What do you think about that?
The problem with 3-betting is, one, Mateos, unless we 3-bet to really big size, Mateos is not folding very much. So now we're playing now we're playing a bloated pot out of position against one of the very best players in the world in a spot where he doesn't care about the money and we do. It's going to be really challenging if he doesn't fold to our C-bet on the flop.
He cares about making good decisions, though, and if he's just too wide, then like we make it like 550, he's probably folding this hand.
Yeah, okay. I guess if we make it 9 blinds, that's like bigger than most people would make it. But you're right. We could do that. That's fine. Like what would be a more typical 3-bet sizing here? It'd be more like 7. Sorry, not 7. That's incorrect. Like 480 is probably. So you're just adding 1 blind to it, but that does feel like a big difference. Like I don't know. He might fold to 480 also. He probably folds this hand to 480 also.
Yeah.
But still, every time he's calling a lot, and every time he calls, it's going to be really hard.
True.
We don't have a blocker in our hand, which sort of sucks. Although he's probably opening a cajillion hands from here, especially now that we're 5-handed. I understand he's doing it from the cutoff, and his range is his range. But it may open him up even a little more because we're near the final table bubble, and the money's getting bigger. Like, all that stuff is in play for other people much more so than for him, right? He doesn't care if he makes the final table or not. I mean, he cares, but he doesn't really care, right?
Yeah.
But it really matters to a lot of other people. So he's going to be pretty wide. So in that way, a 3-bet's pretty cool. I just think we have to be careful not to play a huge, insanely big pot with him out of position. So like by bloating the pot now, we put ourselves in position to do that much more so. That's my biggest concern with this hand, where we don't even have a blocker.
No, that's fair. But I just want to explore these types of things against players like Mateos. Like,
punishing him is good.
Up the variance against the elite guy, you know?
Yeah. It's going to work a lot. And the 3-bet. And we also could 3-bet and shut down a lot, too. Like, we don't have... I mean, we should continue on a lot of boards, though.
But we're
just going to fold so often.
We don't have to continue on. Like, it's just... Now, I don't expect Wenzelberger to have this technical knowledge, but, like, I 3-bet a lot in cash games. It's
Yeah.
more frequently than in tournaments. It's almost always better to 3-bet, and it's pretty easy to know what boards to continue on when you're heads up. Like either you whacked it and you're against a player who's going to pay you off, or it's a range advantage board and you can just not continue on other boards.
Of course.
If it's a king, queen, 4 all diamond board, we can definitely just check fold and it's not a big deal.
I understand that, but there's a lot of boards where we're going to feel obligated to continue. But Adrian is the kind of guy who's going to call with his gut shots. He's going to call with his 2 back doors. He has a lot of calls. He's got a lot of defense on flop C-bets. And he's in position, and he knows being in position gives him more defense because he knows we're going to do a lot of check give ups on the turn, right? Just a lot. Yeah. So it's just going to be hard to get that through. Of course, it's going to work sometimes. This is the concern I have. And again, now we're like making a big play against the best player maybe in the world, like the guy who's going to make the best decisions possible. Out of everyone left in the tournament, we're targeting this guy. Now we're targeting him because he's got a wider opening range. I understand, and I think that will work sometimes. But also he's going to make the best decisions possible and put pressure on us more so than other people would, and make thinner calls and better value bets and tougher bluffs. He's going to do all those things. So I'm inclined not to put myself in that spot a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right overall, but I'm the guy who wants to explore these things.
Yeah,
so
it's good. I mean, we should be doing it some, right? We want to make it a little hard for him, but we got to be careful not to he's going to make our lives very hard if we do this with any frequency. He's going to start coming after us, and he's good at that.
I know this is not this spot, but I think the feeling when it can happen in a cash game sometimes, but in a tournament in particular, late when there's a player who's trying to run over everybody, you have to establish some sort of you can't just fuck with me all the time thing early on,
Yeah.
You don't always have to. Sometimes it just works out that you run well.
Of course.
Sometimes you have to be I'm gonna 4-bet here. It's uncomfortable, but I have to fucking make sure this doesn't keep happening.
Yeah. I remember playing in the main event on day 3, and I was under the gun +1, and I opened, and Jesse Sylvia, who was 2 to my left, 3-bet. It came back to me, and I folded. I don't remember what I had. The very next hand, I was under the gun with 2 9s, and I opened again, and he went into the tank. And I was thinking, I think I have to 4-bet this hand. I think I may have to 4-bet and go with it, basically, because I was down to 50 blinds or 40 blinds, something like that. I was I think I'm just rolling with this hand against him. It's going to suck a lot, but I just can't let him do this to me, especially against this part of my range. I just got to push back sometimes, So I'm agreeing with you.
But he folded, right?
He thought forever. It felt like forever. It was a minute and a half of shuffling the chips, thinking, looking, shuffling, and finally folded. Everyone folded. I took that out. I was going with that one. He's oh, good. I'm really glad I folded then. I'm okay, moving on.
I wonder if he had ace deuce suited or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. King jack suited. I don't know.
Yeah.
Some hand like that.
All right. Anyway, Wenzelberger does the normal thing in calls, which can't be wrong with 9-7 closing the action suited. Yeah. It's a beautiful hand. 330K in the pot. Mateos
beautiful hand.
Beautiful. It's terrific. It's tremendous. Jack of spades, 10 of hearts. Wenzelberger, 9-7 of spades. Flop, 9 of diamonds, 5 of spades, 3 of spades. It's nice to be Philip Wenzelberger right now.
It is. That's a pretty good flop for us kids. Yeah. Holy shit, we did it.
Yeah. Any leading?
I'm believing that Mateos is betting this a lot when we're 5-handed at the table, So because I'm pretty sure a bet's going in. I don't see a lot of value in leading. I don't know why. We don't want him. We don't mind if he folds if we lead, but we don't really want to fold when we lead, right? We've got a huge equity. We've got a monster hand. This is incredible.
Yeah.
I think I just want to check and let him bet because he's going to bet so often. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think if it were more coordinated, I would be concerned about him checking back.
Yeah.
If it were 9-6-5 instead of 9-3-5, something like that.
I agree.
But yeah, on this board, I think he's probably going to bet, and he's going to bet way more than the solver says to bet because of the scenario.
Absolutely.
So
he should.
The question is, do we want to take an aggressive action on the flop? Because Mateos does bet. He goes 180 into 330, which I think makes sense on a board like this. It's a slight range disadvantage. There's a lot of wetness. So we're going a bit bigger than the typical flop bet would be. I like the sizing by Mateos. Do you want to raise or call as Wenzelberger?
All right. All right, Mateos is an interesting guy because he's the kind of guy who absolutely has triple barrels in him. Like a lot of guys don't, right? Very often anyway. So like those guys I'm more inclined to raise sooner because they're going to check back the turn a lot. Mateos is less inclined to check back turns, I think, especially based on the situation than a lot of other folks. So like it's one thing to keep bluffs alive. It's another thing to actually get them to bluff, right? Mateos is the kind of guy who is likely to bluff, more likely at least, to bluff on turns, on brick turns. So that is a reason, that's a factor in me wanting to more check call and keep, it's a way to get more chips in. Like, because if we check raise, if he calls our check raise, the only thing we're beating is a flush draw, right? Like he's not calling with ace high. If the amateur check raises him here, right? And I don't think maybe two eights.
It's really about variance, I think, because most of the points you're making are under the assumption we're remaining with a pair of nines throughout the hand. Like we have a bluff catcher, we're gonna call down a bluff.
I mean, we could improve
Mateos. Yeah, I don't think Mateos is going to continue bluffing on spades. So if we want to get value out of this hand, like in a very serious way, I think raising is the only real way to do it.
You're saying you don't think it's based on his actual hand. You're saying that though, no? Like he has the jack of spades. I think. Go ahead.
I don't think Mateos is often going to be bluffing if spades come in, is what I'm saying.
So a spade on the turn, you don't think he's going to bet again?
I think it's unlikely, yeah.
How come?
Because now the amateur who just check called the flop has like almost no folds left, it feels like. Maybe he has some folds.
He has a lot of folds. He has a lot of one-pair folds now. He's not folding any of his spades, but it's much harder to continue with one pair of hands than it was when Mateos goes bet. Mateos has the jack of spades in his hand. I think Mateos is continuing a lot on spades. And if he's trying to push the amateur around in the biggest spot of the amateur's life, he may be continuing a lot on spades, whether he has a spade in his hand or not. I'm inclined to believe he's going to fire again on spades.
Maybe you're right. Are there any cards he doesn't? What does he not fire on? A nine?
A 9 he's not going to fire on. Probably a 5 he's not going to fire on. Maybe even a 3. Those are the most obvious ones. Maybe something that like completes obvious straightening type stuff like 6s and 7s and 8s. Yeah. I think a 6 is an especially bad card with the way because it interacts with all the straight draws on both sides. The 7 does too, actually. So 6s and 7s are especially rough.
I mean, 8s and 4s are really the 8s and 4s are the worst because 6-7 is a double gutter.
That's true, but like a 6 makes pairs as well as bringing in 7-4 as well as bringing in 7-8. There's just a lot of things, and 2 pair, all this kind of stuff. Those middling cards are all tough. Those are check back cards, I think, unless they're spades. Maybe even a check back as a spade because he's like, is this guy really going to fold 2 pair / straight? If I don't know, maybe. But I think other spades, Adrian's usually betting. So those are the obvious checkbacks things, I think. So like cards in that range. So that's a bunch of cards in fairness. Like if we're obviously saying most cards between 9 and 3 are checkbacks. That's a lot of the deck. Right?
It is. I mean, part of why I want this guy to raise a little bit is because of the skill disparity. It's like,
right.
I know Adrian Mateos is far better than me. I think I'm probably better than Philip Venselberger. I would trust myself at least some to figure it out on future streets. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'm Philip Venselberger and I barely play poker or whatever he does. Like if I trust myself to figure it out against Adrian Mateos in the future, where it can't be a mistake to get it in on this flop with this hand if that's what happens.
That's true. It's true.
It just can't be.
There's essentially the worst case scenario is Adrian has a set, which is really bad, but we start at like 27% to like win the hand, and almost never does he really have a set, right? Because we even block top set. I mean, there's only 7 combos of sets that exist. It's a good spot.
I think that's the allure of raising hands like this. Is there's like really no scenario where it's a mistake to get the money in.
That's true. That's a great point. Like we can't make a mistake now, but we can make a mistake later in the hand by calling or folding or raising. It may be bad then, but right now it can't be wrong to raise. That's a fair point.
Yeah. Yep. And I think it's different for different players. Like maybe Venselberger is better than I'm giving him credit for, and he plays like a lot of cash games or something and knows what he's doing. But if he profiles the way his hendon shows, then I think I want to up the variance in a spot where like we have just kind of a monster flop.
We really do. We really, really do.
But he ends up calling, which I cannot fault. That's totally fine for all of the reasons that you laid out well. So seems good.
Cool.
Raising I think would have been fine too. I don't think we could have shot over that or anything.
I would have been fine with that too.
And Mateos is just like, well, that's too bad. I wish he didn't put more money in. That's unfortunate for me with my Jack 10.
Hope to hit like, a queen or an 8 or a jack or a 10, maybe a spade. Those are all good cards for Adrian.
So we got 9-5-3, 2 spades, 9-7 of spades for Wenzelberger Mateos with Jack of spades, 10 of hearts. The turn is the 3 of hearts.
Okay. Brick. Well,
it is a brick.
Pretty
it pairs
bricky.
the 3. It pairs the 3. Wenzelberger does have some 3s, but
he does.
Not as many as 5s and 9s. So it's slightly less concerning.
Yeah.
If Mateos had an overpair, you would expect him to keep going for value.
Absolutely.
Whereas if it were a 9, you would expect a check back from an overpair, most likely.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yep. I didn't write down the pot size, so I guess we got to do a little math. 360 plus 330, that's really difficult math. 690 in the pot. So Wenzelberger checks. This is not a great card for Wenzelberger. It pairs the board. That's not what you really want with this hand, unless it's a 9.
It's true. It's true.
Now it's much tougher to beat an overpair now, which is unfortunate.
Right. Like a 7 is not an out against an overpair when it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So Wenzelberger checks.
Okay. He could have led,
Mateos.
He still could have led.
He could have. He could rep the 3. That would be fine.
He could also set his price as for this and take control of the hand. But it's okay. But it's fine.
Deny equity against all over cards, which is not such a bad thing to do.
But it's really fine to check. Like especially after all the stuff I was laying out in the beginning of like Adrian's more likely to bluff a lot of cards. Although I don't know if he's gonna bluff the 3, but. I mean, I do know,
he is.
But like in theory, I don't.
He is.
I know.
So, I don't know if this is a technical play or bully play or a combination of the two. But Mateos goes nearly full pot with 580 on this 3 of hearts.
Yeah,
he's just counting on Wenzelberger to fold all of his 9s and 7s that don't have or not 9s and 7s, 9s and 5s that don't have something else going on with them. I guess.
I mean, it's going to be hard to call with just a lone 5 here. For sure.
Even with a hand like King 9 suited that's not spades. Like it's not pretty
great.
Hard to keep
it's not great.
Keep going. Yeah.
Yep. And of course, as Mateos, we block Jack 9 and 10 9, which are hands that now there's a lot of 9s out there in fairness, but there's some but like we block some of the more obvious easy call pre-flop 9s. We block a little bit of that. That's some value.
We do block spades.
Yeah.
So we block a little bit of 9x of spades, like we block Jack 9 of spades as a continuing hand. And,
I guess so.
We don't block diamonds, which is a slight issue as far as what hands like. If we had the 10 of diamonds, it would just be a little bit better, right? Because now he has his 5x of diamonds that he can continue with some ease.
Okay, but he's just got a lot of 5s and he's got a lot of 5s he's just folding, and maybe a lot of 9s he's folding too. If we can fold out all the 1-pair hands pretty much, and even straight draws may fold on this board, probably folding on this board, especially for the size we're about to put in.
Yeah.
It seems fine. It seems like this is just going to work. And clearly Mateos is like, this guy's got no hendon. This is the biggest spot of his life, probably. He's an amateur. He wants to make the final table. He cares about all this money up front in a way that, this is just normal for me. Like, pressure works, I think situationally this is probably a really good bluff spot.
I agree. And
we're just going to
work for players like Mateos for infinity time. Since poker tournaments began, the Mateoses of the world have been making these plays when it's late in a tournament, and it always is profitable. So that's just how to do it.
Yeah. So we said Mateos might check back a 3, but actually now that we've talked it through, it seems like that wouldn't make any sense. Yeah.
Yeah. But Wenzelberger can't fold this hand, right?
No.
Even though
no way.
His perceived equity against Mateos' range has shrunk still. It's too good of a hand. We have too many good things going on still.
Yeah.
Is there an argument for raising?
Wow. Okay, well, we do block. We block 9s full. That's good. We block a 9 period. Do we think an overpair is going to fold if we raise? We're an amateur. Maybe they really might.
I think there's a real chance, man. I think this is actually a great spot for jam. I think, we block 9s full, which is huge. Mateos has, 1, 2. He has 5 slam dunk call combos. He has the 3 combos of 5-5, 1 combo of 9-9, and 1 combo of 3-3.
Yeah, sure. Well, no, any Ace 3 is a slam dunk call. Let's not
Okay,
pretend.
yeah, ace 3. You're right. So he's
Any
probably
three.
only got ace 3 suited.
King 3 suited, Ace 3 suited, probably he has.
Okay. All right.
Maybe
so,
3-4 suited. Maybe.
Okay, he might have like 12 slam dunk call combos, but is literally everything else a fold against a guy like Wenzelberger? If he check jams on this,
Assuming Wenzelberger is playing chill and not losing his mind in any way and playing the way you'd expect an amateur to play throughout this event, and Mateos knows that, probably we'd strongly consider folding aces here, even without the ace of spades in our hand, which would be normally a reason to call, but against Wenzelberger, it's probably just a fold, right?
Yeah.
Unless we see him overvaluing things. If we see him overvaluing stuff, that's different, obviously.
it's hard to imagine somebody overvaluing something that's like you mean like tens, like something like tens.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I guess that's possible, something like that. I don't know.
I mean,
that didn't 3-bet pre-flop, by the way.
Yeah, but like older amateur guy, like may not be 3-betting tens sometimes pre-flop.
Okay, but where does the cutoff happen? Jacks, queens, kings?
Sometimes they call no matter what. Kristen Foxen was calling with kings in the big blind in the main event, on day 8.
She's a clear amateur.
I'm just saying, like, people sometimes call with these hands.
The upshot for me is I'm really leaning towards a jam here. I think like we don't have a ton of equity against his slam dunk calls, but there aren't many of them. And if we're including some of the suited threes, then we actually do have some equity against those. Like, it's not that bad.
The thing that's interesting about this hand is, so if we call, essentially Mateos has a pot-sized bet left. Almost exactly, right? Give or take. Is that true? Am I right about that? Yeah. If we call, there's going to be 1.85. Oh, it's going to be exactly a pot-sized bet left. Wow, that's cool. Feels like Mateos really went out of his way to engineer that very, very beautifully. And I don't know if we can. I mean, it's going to be really hard to hold on if he fires another barrel with just this hand, right? If we don't improve, and a 7 isn't really improving anymore, right? A 7 is not enough to improve. So now we need to hit a 9 or a spade to improve.
And we can fold out the vast majority of his range, and we have equity against some of his calls if he does have those suited threes. And even we have equity against 5-5, we can still hit a 9. It's not good equity, but we have.
I mean, also we could be wrong, and he could be calling some of his overpairs. He may be calling 8 red aces or something like that.
I don't want to
have
do
equity
it
against that too.
If he's calling a lot of overpairs, I don't want to jam. If he's calling maybe a very tiny portion of them,
it's really hard to know though what he's actually doing, right? Like. We're really guessing here. He may feel like he has to call aces because 2 red aces, let's say, where he doesn't block the ace of spades. And if you think the guy's going to overvalue 10s, for example, or play a flush draw aggressively once in a while on the turn, I wouldn't expect the amateur to do that. But once in a while, amateurs do stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So if we think that guy has any of that in him, we have to call 2 red aces. We're just going to have to. If we're betting him, we have to call them, right? We can check him back if we want a pot control, but otherwise
it really
have
depends
to call.
on if we think the guy has any of that in him. And maybe he doesn't.
We just don't know.
Might not.
We don't know his image. We're basing it all on his hendon. It's not a lot to base it on. There are guys with no hendons who absolutely have that play in them, and there are guys who don't. Right. So we just don't know. If Mateos, I will say this: if Mateos is betting the hand that he's betting, Jack 10, which is essentially a no equity bluff, he may feel like he has to call off some hands like aces because he's going to have a lot of bluffs then. He's going to be folding such a large percentage of his range. He may feel like he has to call with some things that aren't just slam dunk calls.
Fair, but that is evidence that the shove is a good play if he has that many no equity hands.
No doubt. Except a shove is a good play, except we're also like winning. So
but we're denying equity. Yeah, like it's not. This hand is not invulnerable to the weaker hands. So I know. I'm sure we could fold out at least some better hands than a pair of 9s here.
I think you're right. The other thing about denying equity, because we have spades in our hand, is if he's got 2 unpaired overcards, which is really the only equity we're talking about denying here, right? He only has 4 outs. Right? Like, he can't have more than 4 outs.
Well, what if he has 2 spade overcards? What does Mateos do with 2 spade overcards?
That is an interesting question.
Because we would love that hand to fold.
That hand probably folds on the paired board. Just in case, right? Just in case. That's an interesting one. 2 spades makes sense.
Yeah.
It's
we
an
really
interesting
want him
spot.
to fold the king queen of spades. We would love that hand to go away. It has just a little bit too much equity for our liking.
That is pretty good. Let me ask you this. Let's say we've been sitting at this table for a while and watching Adrian run over the table, which would not be surprising, right? He's opening a lot, and then once it's like he's playing it like we're on the stone bubble of a tournament, except there's like 12 left and there's 11 left. We're near the final table bubble, and he's like, go, 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 baby, and just like putting huge pressure and triple barreling a lot, double barreling all the time. So if you're sitting there and you believe there's a good chance, like I don't know how to assign that percentage, 30% chance, 40% chance, 50% chance, he's going to barrel the river, a lot of rivers anyway, with nothing. He's going to do that. Yeah. Are you more inclined to just call here and let him do that? Or are you more inclined still just to like keep your life easier and raise? Because the raise is the easier play mentally, right? Like you can't fuck it up it can't be that bad to raise even if he calls. You still have equity against almost everything.
I think if it were a cash game, I would be more inclined to do the call route. In a tournament where your tournament life is so valuable, especially at this stage. And I think like the preservation of life that comes with not letting him hit his random card is pretty valuable in this spot.
That's fair. Interesting. It's an interesting spot. I go back and forth. The other thing is, like we're also being asked to put in 9.5 blinds here, right? Like we still actually have a stack left. And if we move in and we get called, which, can happen, like we may have essentially very little stack left when like it could also go check a lot on the river. Even if we're behind, he may go check depending on certain rivers and, the 5 pairs and just like, I don't know, check,
but lots of those hands that he's going to check back, we would have gotten to fold had we shoved.
That's true.
That we lose to.
That is true. That's true. But he also he may give up on. I mean, he's gonna have some give ups on the river for sure. But he's also gonna put a lot of pressure on us, is my guess, based on the fact that he bet the turn here, and this is the situation that we're in, right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting spot. Yeah. If you think he's gonna bluff a lot, it's an interesting spot to like give him the rope to do it. Like, I understand what you're talking about in terms of equity. You probably win the tournament more often by giving him the rope. But you also get knocked out more often by giving him the rope. It's a higher variance play.
Taking it to the next level, giving him the rope gives you the opportunity to eliminate or cripple Adrian Mateos, who is the biggest threat to win the tournament.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good.
Not only do you get all the chips,
The jam is effectively just trying to end the hand now, and sometimes you get all of his chips when he calls. It does happen sometimes, and that can happen. But sometimes you're drawing near dead. It's
a pretty bad spot when he calls, though. You're almost never in good shape when he calls, and that's not what you want. Now you're going to give Adrian Mateos nearly all the chips, and you're going to be down to like 14 blinds or something instead of we eliminate Adrian and get all the chips. Like, holy shit, what an incredible double feature we just saw, So that is pretty cool. We give ourselves the chance for that. It's a higher variance road, no doubt.
Yep. Anyway, he calls.
Okay.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah.
I think jamming is also reasonable. Once again, raising and calling reasonable on both flop and turn.
Yeah.
Interesting. 1.85 million in the pot. Adrian has perfectly set it up so that he has exactly 1.85 million because he's some sort of savant who loves doing stuff like that. The river is the king of clubs. It is one of the worst cards in the deck for Wenzelberger. Not a fan of this card if you're Wenzelberger at all.
The king of diamonds is worse. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
But and an ace is worse, but yeah. Okay.
He checks. He has no choice. That's all you can do. All right, as Adrien Mateos, is this a good situation for us to put the pedal to the metal?
Yeah.
Are we supposed to do it here?
Yeah.
Okay. That's for all the reasons that we talked about, the tournament reasons, the scared guy reasons. Let's talk about it from a technical perspective.
Okay, good.
Is this a good situation to do it from a technical perspective, forgetting about who Wenzelberger is and all this stuff?
I would say technically this is not the right hand to be bluffing with, right? We have a spade in our hand we don't love. We have no significant blockers of any kind in a good way. We just have a blocker in a bad way. We don't have a diamond in our hand. I guess that's good. But spades are much more likely than diamonds. Spades were front door, diamonds were back door. not blocking anything is, I guess we unblock the straight draws, but when he calls the turn, the straight draws aren't really a thing anymore, right? Unless it's straight and flush draws, and guess what? We're winning anyway. So we don't need to bluff that. Jack High's winning there. So I think technically this would not be a good shove. So as soon as we leave the situation, it's a terrible shove. In this situation, though, I think it's probably the right play. What do you think?
I agree with everything you said.
Okay.
Nothing to add. He does the cool thing. He leaves himself $100K.
Smart.
That's $1.75 million.
Why not?
It is. You
Oh,
still
it
have
is.
a chance to win the tournament if you get called. Let's do the thoughts.
Okay.
As Venzelberger.
Okay.
I mean, obviously there's the metagame thoughts of like, is Mateos trying to bully me, et cetera, et cetera. Forget about that for a second, and we can add that back in later. Let's do the technical stuff.
Good.
Where are we in our distribution?
We have a few threes. Not that many, but we have some threes. We have a few kings. Do we have King X of spades?
Well, King 9 of spades. We definitely have that.
Yes. We have King 9 of spades for sure.
Yeah.
But we called 580 on the turn, so do we have any other kings besides King 9 of spades? I don't know.
No, maybe
we don't
not.
have King 5, I don't think. I think that's the only king we have is King 9 of spades.
Yeah, might be.
So that would be a pretty easy call if we had King 9 of spades, because now we're beating Ace King and King Queen, which in theory could shove, right?
In theory.
In theory. Okay. Past King 9 of spades, we don't have any other kings. We have a few threes. Past those hands, this is the next best thing. Like, in some ways, we don't want to have spades, but we never get to the river without spades anyway, unless it's diamonds. But with the 9, it would have to be spades.
We prefer the spade to be bigger than the 9, though, because the 7 blocks straight draws, which Mateos could get to the river with.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
If we're giving him like reasonable hands to get here with. Obviously, he has random no equity shit, too, so maybe that's not as important.
It'd be really nice to have Queen 9 of spades, though. We'd be blocking King, Queen, and unblocking the straight draws. That would be cool.
Yeah.
But coming back to it, we don't have very many 9s, like at all, that aren't 9x of spades. We may have no 9s unless we held on. Maybe we held on the turn with like ace 9 sometimes.
But what do we have that's worse than this?
Good question. Do we really think we're folding? We can't be folding all of our 9s on the turn, right? We have to call with some of our other 9s.
Yeah, well, we'd rather have those hands.
I know.
Like
I'm getting there. Like ace 9. Ace 9
yeah.
is like a better hand to call with. No spades, right? Got to be better to call with.
Yeah.
So is this the worst 9 we have? Maybe it is. And we don't have anything worse than a 9. So is this like the very bottom of our distribution?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I think it is.
I think it is. And we have spades, which is bad to have.
It's a fold.
It's a fold.
It's a fold.
Not a huge surprise. And I believe Adrian would shove ace king here, for example, right? Like he'd shove it and be like, please don't snap call, please don't snap call. Oh, good, he didn't snap call.
Yeah.
I don't know how often I get called by things, especially if he didn't have the king of spades in his hand, right? Because you're like, maybe once in a while this guy maybe has the king of spades. Although King X of spades, I don't even know if it really calls the turn. I don't know. I think Adrian's shoving. I think he's shoving ace king though.
I think he is too. Just kind of as a like I kind of have to when he checks 3 times type of thing.
Like the board is so not scary. Like how am I losing here? Like I don't know. You could say to yourself, he called a really big bet on the turn. Is he really calling with anything worse than this on the river though? Maybe you talk yourself into it's a check back because of that. Is this guy really going to call for his tournament with one pair?
Yes, he is.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he is.
Venzelberger does end up calling with the 9-7 of spades,
Incredible.
which like even though it's the very bottom of his distribution, when Mateos is showing up with Jack 10 with a spade, it might still be the right call. Like we only talked about distribution, but it's possible that even the bottom of your distribution forces you to call.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this is sort of goes back to what we were talking about on the turn, right? Of playing the high variance route of if Adrian's just putting a lot of pressure on people, and we know, let's say as Venzelberger, we know we're the primary target for this, right? Probably of everyone at the table, we're the biggest target to get pushed around. So, and maybe we sit there and we think, I don't know that he's shoving ace king. I don't know that he's shoving king queen. I'm not sure if he's doing that, but I know he's showing a huge amount of his bluffs. And by the way, is he shoving queens now? Is he shoving jacks? Is he shoving tens? Probably not. right?
Yeah.
So
Probably
now
not.
it's aces, ace, king, and sets, and threes. That's it.
Yeah.
There's not that
And I
many
just
combos of
realized
those things. Yeah.
we may have cut off the bottom of Wenzelberger's distribution a little too hastily. It's possible that he shows up with combo draws. He might not. I mean, like, I think I prefer a check raise at any point in the hand.
Oh,
but he might.
Yeah.
He might show up with 7-8 of spades here.
Okay.
Something like that.
So he's got some insta folds, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think that's possible, especially the amateur may play that a little more carefully. Not impossible. But he doesn't have that many of those. It's not that many combos either way. Like 9-7 is still, if you look at all the hands we can have in totality, 9-7 is still way, way down, even if you include some combo draws that we called with on the turn.
Yeah, but it still might be a call if Mateos is showing up with like literally every Broadway combo that isn't a king also, even when they have a spade.
Yeah. I agree.
Like, so
I agree. I think this may be sometimes he has these hands, but a lot of the times he doesn't, and I get to essentially bankrupt him and get all these chips at the same time. It's pretty amazing. Like, what a spot. And by the way, guess who's not going to pick on the amateur anymore? Everyone else at the fucking table after they see this
That's
fucking
true.
call. If I survive this hand, no one will pick on me ever again. That's pretty good.
Wenzelberger's got 100 bigs now. It's pretty sweet. Mateos goes out pretty soon after this.
Yeah, he does.
Wenzelberger gets 9th. Somehow he dusts it off.
Well,
2 players later,
I mean,
gone.
I can guess how he dusted off. He probably made a lot more calls like this, right? People at the table were like, they were all like, okay, oh my God, don't just value bet, and then they're like, but he's still calling because he still thinks people are trying to push him around, maybe? I don't know. He should know
the opposite of my learning experience, right? He had a good result that was a bad lesson that he should always hero call.
If that's what happened. We don't even know.
Yeah, who knows?
He may have just been coolered or, got in a bad situation. Like,
I like to make little stories in my head.
I know you do. I know you do. And that's fun.
Speculate.
It's fun.
Yeah. Anyway, Adrian Mateos with a disappointing result for him, which most people would have been happy with. But
how much money did he make? Do we know?
70,000.
Ooh, and 10K buy-in?
5K.
5K still.
He should
14,
be. He
14
should be ashamed.
buy-ins.
He should be ashamed.
He's like, how did that guy call? That was a freebie. That reminds me. I'm going to tell another quick World Series story. You've heard me tell this story before, but it's been years. We're playing in the end of day 2 of the Monster Stack. I think it was the Monster Stack, not the Millionaire Maker. It was one of those. But it's the end of day 2. This kid is at the table. He's dominating the table. He's playing so good. It's so clear he's the best player at the table by a mile. So obvious. I don't know who he is. I've never seen him before or since, but holy shit, he's better than everyone. And he gets into this spot where he bets. He goes bet, and on the river he checks. And the old guy sitting next to me bets. There's 4 cards to a straight out there, but the board's paired. And the kid check raises all in, and the old guy calls instantly with the board is 9, 10, king, queen, and the guy just has jack 10, right? And the the old guy instantly calls with jack 10, this huge check raise for his life on the river, or for essentially his life on the river. And the kid has got like the board's paired, and he's got 2 pair beside. He's got king 9, and the board is like 8, 8, 8, 9, or something like that. And the kid is just like out of his mind that the guy called. He didn't even have ace jack, and like calls instantly. Like the guy doesn't even think about it. He just like throws the chip in for.
Doesn't he have a straight?
He has a straight, right? But he has like not even a good straight. He's got like the easy straight, which is like you're chopping at best kind of straight. Like if the guy's moving in for value here, like you're never beating anything for value.
Against this kid, I think we've had this discussion. It might be a better call than ace jack.
Because he blocks because with the 10 in his hand. Yeah, maybe it is. But the point is, the guy never even considered folding. That's what I'm saying. He didn't consider. He's just like, oh, I have a straight. I call. That was all that was going on. It was so fast. He just did one of the like side calls, like I call. And the kid just like turns over his hand, knows he's fucked, and the guy is like, and the kid is out, and the guy is sitting next to me, and he's just saying to himself really quietly, I have over 1 million chips. I have over 1 million chips. And it was so incredible. And I was what
a good time for that guy.
Such a good play by the kid, but clearly the wrong target, as it turns out. Wow. You can make a great play. It doesn't matter sometimes. Anyway, it's just interesting. Anyway.
The guy probably made the right call against that kid, by the way. And maybe he's supposed to fold ace jack and call with any jack that has a pair with it.
It's possible you're just supposed to even call with ace jack. The kid was doing a lot of check raising. He was making, but it was incredible to watch. I was just like, this kid's owning us. He's going to own us forever. We have no chance against this kid. That's how I
were
felt.
saved. Your savior came in.
I was like, oh man, I would have tanked with like 9s full of 8s here, and this guy's like insta calling with like just a jack. It's like, pretty wild.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, that was a long one, and that is how Adrian Mateos did not win the Monte Carlo main event.
That's how Adrian Mateos went back to his other job, killing people with his elbows. Elbow death.